But when my kids were young, I did feel like I was going to go crazy. I was like, I don't know that I'm going to get to the other side of this homeschooling, of being a mother, of my kids getting older with my brain intact. I feel like it's just so fractured, and I feel like there's just so much. And I don't know if I'm going to come out the other side well in my brain. Am I going to be sane by the other side of this? And I think I am.
Welcome to Little by Little Homeschool Podcast, where you'll learn tips and strategies that will empower you to home educate your children. I'm Leigh Nguyen, a homeschool mom of over 12 years, which includes 2 graduates. When I started homeschooling, I was pretty much on my own and was desperate for encouragement and help. My mission is to be a source of encouragement and help to you. Whether you are just beginning your homeschool journey or you're deep into the homeschool lifestyle, Little by Little Homeschool wants to help you stay the course, because all the time you are investing into your children is completely worth it. If you're ready to take your homeschool to new levels, keep listening.
Hey, friend. Welcome to today's episode and welcome to March. I don't know what the weather has been like for you this winter, but we have been slammed with an actual real winter, and we've gotten a lot of snow. I think that possibly we are breaking some records with the amount of snow. I'll say my part-time job has been shoveling. I don't mind it. It gives me a reason, an excuse to go outside, because I feel like it'd be a little weird if I was outside, because I love to be outdoors anytime that I can, but it'd be weird if I, as a 49-year-old woman with no young children, was outside building an igloo in my yard. So my excuse is that I get out and I shovel, and I try and get out for a walk every day too. And as of recording this, when this comes out, I should have just gotten back the evening before this comes out from a weekend trip away with my youngest to go visit some family, do a ski weekend, and it has been a very good winter for winter sports, such as skiing. So that's been really good. And tying this into the title of, the homeschooling might make you lose your mind, I'm going to tell you that allowing a young person to drive you places, kind of, you get to that season where there's seasons where they're younger and you feel like you're going to lose your mind for different reasons than you are right now. And the plan is to allow him to drive up there and back because he needs the experience, and better to get that experience with me in the car than on his own. I mean, he can do it on his own too, but wow, it's just another level. But when my kids were young, I did feel like I was going to go crazy. I was like, I don't know that I'm going to get to the other side of this homeschooling, of being a mother, of my kids getting older with my brain intact. I feel like it's just so fractured, and I feel like there's just so much, and I don't know if I'm going to come out the other side well in my brain. Am I going to be sane by the other side of this? And I think I am. That might be debatable at times. That's a complete joke. But, I've gotten to this other side and we've pushed through. And so today I'm going to talk to you about some things that might be triggering this, that might be setting it off, that might be adding to the feeling of I might go crazy here. This might just be too much and too overwhelming for me. And so in shining a light on these couple of areas that I think really can add to it, hopefully then those are things that can be worked through. Those are things maybe that can be removed. Those are things that can get to the other side so that you have a calmness, a peace. And God wants to give you that peace. He wants you to feel that assurance that He is there with you, and He wants you to have a calm mind as you approach the education and the discipleship and the rearing of your children. And the very first area that I want to shine a really big spotlight on is a question. And this is one that I want you to ask yourself and to think. Is what I'm going through in my mind, is this feeling like this is too overwhelming and it's too much and I'm not going to be able to be strong enough mentally and emotionally for this? Ask yourself, is the root of it homeschooling, or is it motherhood in general? I think it's a really important question, because we can look at mothers who are not homeschooling, and they're probably feeling the same way. There's a lot of pressures. There's a lot on the to-do list. There is a lot that they want to do. There's a lot that's going on. There's a lot of just all different factors. And yes, there is this difference of homeschooling, but they're also feeling it to the degree that they are. And their feeling of this is very real, as well as yours. And I think we have to now, as a homeschool mom, ask yourself, is it the homeschooling that is causing me to feel like I'm going to lose it? Or is it the motherhood in general? And yes, it's a combination of both, because when we are homeschooling, it is 24/7. There is not that break. There is not that time that you are apart or that you have to reset. But I do think it's important to add in times to reset. And it's really important to recognize, like, I'm about to go over the edge here, whether like clinically or just like that you just feel like, I need a break, I need to get away. Or can you take the kids out for the evening? Can you take them on a Saturday afternoon somewhere just so that you get a break at home? Or if it's you getting out. But we can often blame the overwhelming feeling that we're experiencing and the feeling of just like, I don't know if I'm going to make this through. We can blame it on the homeschooling. And the natural next step can be, well, if I stop homeschooling, then that will be solved. I won't have those overwhelming feelings. I won't feel like there is just so much and that I can't push through this. Now, yes, it possibly could give you that free time from, say, 8:30, 9 a.m. until 2:30, 3:30 in the afternoon, where you are free, as long as you don't have younger children. You might have still younger children. But still that could be like, oh, I do get that break. The older ones are in school, and so it's just the younger ones, and they take naps. So therefore you get a little time in the afternoon. So yes, a little bit of that free time could solve that. However, you've decided that the educating and the spending of your time with your children is important, and you have a greater mission and a bigger vision for your family than the one that you're told to have just by society, by putting your kids into school. And so therefore, not homeschooling, that's not an option for you. And if you're feeling like quitting, I do have an episode or so. I will drop that link in the show notes to kind of give you a little bit of a pep in your step, and maybe we'll say maybe also a little kick in your pants too to keep doing it. But we can often want to blame that it is the homeschooling, and we think that if we just quit, it'll be okay. However, how do we solve this? We can solve this problem of, is it the homeschooling or the motherhood, by coming up with a clear vision for your family. And this is something that you really should do with your husband, because homeschooling and the motherhood and the fatherhood and the parenthood in general should be intertwined. There shouldn't be a time where you are doing your homeschool lessons and you are removed from your motherhood and you are just a teacher. We are always going to be the mother, because when we remove that part, then it's just kind of like school at home. And that's not the goal. There might be some times that might kind of feel a little bit like school at home if you have a lot of workbooks and a lot of school books and stuff. But if that fits your style, then that fits your style of homeschooling. But when you come up with a clear vision for your family with your husband, things of like talking about how you want to parent, how you want to discipline, how you want to disciple, how you want to spend your time, when all of that is clear and you have a why for your family, you have a greater vision and a greater mission. So you're like, well, I don't know if we do. You probably do. You need to sit and dig it out and figure out what is that. But I'm going to almost guarantee that I know that your greater vision and your greater mission is to pour into your kids a biblical worldview, and for you in your parenthood to glorify God, to point them towards God and point them on that road, that they will then continue that they will then walk as believers in the world and know how to do that. I can almost guarantee that that is part of your vision, of your why and your mission. Therefore, thinking about what is going to support that. If there are things that are not going to support that, then maybe they need to be stripped away. So when you're thinking about, is this homeschooling or is this motherhood in general, the answer is probably yes and yes and yes to all of it. But when we can stop and think, okay, it's not necessarily the homeschooling, it's probably not necessarily the read alouds and the fun books and the things that we're doing, it could be that it's overwhelming because you have too many science experiments and too many history projects and all kinds of that stuff. And maybe some of that needs to be weeded down, but most of the time, it's just the motherhood in general. And moms across the board in different seasons of life and in different choices of how they're raising their kids are all going to feel overwhelmed at times. And now I do have some solutions to these, but I want to jump now to the second area that I find really can contribute to this feeling like you are not measuring up well, and that has to do with social media. And that has to do with our comparison of social media. So let's talk about I feel like there's in two different areas of social media. There can be those that you know in real life, and then there are those that you do not know. You only know them as their social media presence. And therefore, it's looking at it the same, but also different. So let's talk about those that you see in real life. You might have friends who post on Facebook, Instagram, and they're going to show the highlights. They're all going to show the good stuff. And you might know this person and know them pretty well and say to yourself, well, if she can still do this and I know everything else that's going on in her life and she's still doing this, so you compare yourself and say, well, I don't think I'm doing as well. We didn't go. So think like the fall. Maybe you have a friend and in the fall, there's a lot of different fall activities you can do. She's posting pictures and videos of them of hikes. They went on hay rides. They went to pick pumpkins. They went to this fall festival. They went to do all these things. And you're like, I'm just trying to get my kids to take a nap every single day so that maybe I can take a nap, or I can just sit for an hour and read a book, or just be and breathe, or get some stuff done around the house. And you could say, well, I know she has all these other things going on in her life. And there are people who are higher capacity, who can have a lot going on in their life and still function very well. And so we can compare ourselves on social media to people that we know in real life. And then we can also compare ourselves to those that we don't know. We just know their online persona. And we're not always getting the full story of that, because I don't think that people should be sharing the full story with a bunch of strangers. And I think that we should have boundaries for those things. And therefore, with those boundaries, you're not seeing the nitty gritty. You're not seeing maybe some of the chaos. You're not seeing some of the bigger issues. Maybe this woman might show she just seems to have a picture perfect home and her children and her homeschool is just perfect. But in real life, her and her husband are really greatly struggling in their marriage. And you don't know that. And you might never know that. Or it might come out sometime at some point and you'll say, oh, wow, I didn't know that was all going on, because she's chosen just to show one part, whether that's because it's a business or it's just because she wants to, and there's no judgment on that. So that could be the second reason why you're feeling like you might lose your mind with all this homeschooling, is that you're comparing with social media. And the third reason that I find, or the third thing that kind of influences how you're feeling, is the school mentality. And that's holding on to that. And it's adding in that comparison that is an unnecessary burden. When you're comparing what you're doing in school, how your kids are doing, and maybe you don't give tests and you don't give letter or number grades to maybe a paper that they wrote or sentences or whatever they're doing, their math worksheet, you don't do that. And so you're like, oh, they're going to be missing out on something because I don't do that. But just in general, too. You're thinking, well, we're not doing lots of worksheets. We're instead doing read-alouds and narrations, and we're out in nature, and we're taking hikes, and we're observing things and talking about it, and then maybe looking things up and getting books out of the library. But I'm not doing exactly like the school, so therefore it's not quite right. And so we have that school mentality. Most of us, if not all of us, have that to a degree. I do see some hope in that our awareness of that and working at rooting that out and saying, no, that's false. Our kids are getting a different education. And it might be a little bit of a mix of the school mentality because we're pouring that in, or we're squeaking it in here and there. And I'm hopeful that the next generation after that will have less of it. And the next generation after that will have less of it. Lord willing, right? That our children and our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren end up being homeschooled as well. So the third reason is because of that school mentality that is adding an unnecessary burden. So how do we solve these three things? So I've got one for each of these. So the first one for is it homeschooling or motherhood is that you need to decide, is it the homeschooling or is it the motherhood? If it's the motherhood in general, then maybe the homeschooling needs to take a little bit of a back seat a little bit until you get your feet on the ground with that. A lot of times with the feeling of that you might lose your mind, that you're not going to make it through all of these years, especially if you have young children, is creating more of a rhythm or routine to the day. It doesn't have to be super specific, but maybe if you're really struggling, you might want to try that. And it might be just that it doesn't have to be specific, times of 8:45 to 9:05. But I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong with have general times of saying, okay, everybody's usually up and getting ready and breakfast. So between 7 and 9 a.m., we're going to have breakfast. We're going to get dressed. We're going to make our bed. We'll do a couple of chores. And by 9 o'clock, let's be sitting on the couch and doing our reading. Or by 9 o'clock, let's be sitting and doing our math lesson. And then the goal is maybe you have all young children. You say, by 11 o'clock, I would love to be able to be done with all of the homeschool. Now, it doesn't mean that all the kids are doing it from 9 to 11. Maybe you have an older one, and they are, but the younger ones aren't. They're just kind of in and out. You pull them in for a lesson, and then you let them go. You guys do some morning time together, and then you say, free time, 11 to 12. And then during that time, maybe you do a little bit of cleanup, or you have some free time. Noon, we're going to have some lunch. And it doesn't have to be something that's so strict. I think sometimes as homeschoolers, we can be like, oh, we don't want to be anything like the school, and they have bells and certain times for things. But there are seasons where that's really helpful. And if you're struggling with that, the day just feels like it is utter chaos. And that chaos is going to mess with you. It's going to mess with your brain, with your mind. I would encourage you to look into creating some type of routine. A great resource for motherhood from a homeschooling perspective would be Sally Clarkson. Her books were a lifeline. I can't remember the Mission of Motherhood. I remember specifically, definitely Seasons of a Mother's Heart. So the couple of books that she wrote around then, which might have been early 2000s or so, but I know you can find them like on Amazon, Thrift Books, or wherever you like to buy some books. Those are really helpful because we can read motherhood books, but if you're already feeling like you're on the verge of like a breakdown, then maybe stick to books that specifically are from moms who homeschool as well, because they understand that extra level that you are actually going through. Other motherhood books, they can be fine, but then it can also add to that part about, with the school, when they talk about school, and there's seasons where where I read books, I'm like, I don't really care that the person is talking about school and their kids going to school and stuff like that. I can take that out. But if you're struggling right now, I would say to read some books. Specifically, I would say Sally Clarkson, some of the books around that Seasons of a Mother's Heart. That was really good for me. The next point that I made about social media is just downright maybe need to get off of social media. Delete it from your phone. Maybe say you can only access it from maybe your laptop. And, that takes some time. You got to pull it out. You got to open it up. You got to turn, it doesn't take that long. But there is at some point in that process of maybe pulling it out and opening it up and turning it on, you might say, no, I really don't care what's going on Facebook. And during that minute or so, you might find that, okay, I don't want to do that. And you put it away. And so sometimes just getting off of the social media and or just dealing with the emotions that are going along with that. Just saying, that is good for her, but that's not good for me right now. And so social media can add a lot to our life. It can feel like it takes as well. And so you have to go into it with the right frame of mind. So maybe work through that, pray, ask God, just take away, root out my jealousy that I might have for some of these other women. And you might need to unfollow some for a little while. And then when you are in a better place yourself, you can go ahead and follow them again if there's somebody that's worth following. And then how about the part about the school mentality and allowing that to put an unnecessary burden on you? And deschooling is so important. And it is a process. It is a continual process. It isn't something that you just do for one day. Or I know there's a 1 month for every year the kid was in school. But then you're like, okay, I was in school for 13 years plus the 4 of college. How long is it going to go? There can be a time where you make some really great leaps and bounds. But then there's going to be time where it just takes time. I still find myself sometimes as well, not nearly as much as I did even just a couple years ago, let alone 10 years ago. So working on the deschooling, I do have an episode about that, and I will link it in the show notes. And along with that is that thought that if we're not doing what the school's doing, our kids are not going to be successful. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you are intentional in your homeschooling, your kids will succeed. You just have to trust the process. And I know it's hard. And I questioned the process until I started to see my oldest getting ready to graduate. And now she's 22. And I'm like, I don't worry at all about my 17-year-old because I have seen that success. And I know you might say, oh, my oldest is only 7. That's going to be a really long time. Yes and no. It is going to be a long time, but the time will fly by as well. And to encourage you as you seek to create a vision and to feel prepared to continue to homeschool, to have that foundation, your homeschool blueprint is available for you. You can get all the details for that at littlebylittlehomeschool.com/blueprint. But that's going to lay that foundation so that all the years that you have to continue with homeschooling, whether that is you have maybe a middle schooler or a high schooler or you do have younger children, it will meet you right where you are. This could be your first year of homeschooling, could be your 3rd year, could be your 13th year, and you've lost sight of things after homeschooling for so long. It doesn't matter where you are in that journey. Your homeschool blueprint is going to help you to get that solid foundation, and then you can build upon it for the many, many, many years ahead. And that's a good many, many years. I promise that right now, if you're feeling like you're going to lose your mind with all of this, you will slowly come out of it. I feel like I've been doing that. I feel like I jump into like a deep hole and then say you're climbing just slowly out of it. And I'm there. I'm like seeing the light. I'm breathing in the fresh air. And I can appreciate that time. And I know it's hard. I don't want to diminish the difficulty that it is. I want to encourage you to have communication with your husband. Tell him what you need. I know that they want to help you through this. They see where you're struggling and they're not always quite sure where to step in. Ask him to step in. Ask him to maybe do a math lesson or ask him to take the kids out for a walk just for about 15 minutes or ask him if it's okay. I'm going to go to a coffee shop, meet up with a friend, or just go out by yourself, just so that you do have a little bit of that margin, but look and see what is it that's causing it. If it's the homeschooling, maybe that needs to be rearranged. Take a look at your homeschool blueprint in order to do that. And maybe it's the motherhood. I would encourage you to read some of those Sally Clarkson books and to spend time in prayer and seeking God's will for your family and the direction in that.
Thank you for listening, friend. I'd love to connect with you more. You can find social media links in the show notes and share this episode with a friend who could use a boost to her homeschool. See you back here real soon.